Hi everyone, good afternoon. Welcome back to another little quick epi. My name is Celina Cordobael and I just wanted to welcome everyone this afternoon. Yesterday was the auspicious holiday of Thanksgiving, so all those that do celebrate and did, I hope you guys spent great times with your families and I hope it was good. Basically this afternoon I wanted to just address some questions that a couple people have been asking me, just in terms of like, funny enough, certain IDs that I showed on, whether it be Instagram or I think I showed it on Tumblr and Instagram a little while ago. And this was just like, me celebrating my own little triumphs. But those triumphs are as such as, I don't really know that many people, whether you want to claim yourself as being Moorish. There's a huge wave right now of Moorish Americans and what that is. And of course, like anything else, it can be a clusterfuck of what everyone defines it for themselves to be. And even though, that's a good thing, I'm grateful that, it's bringing more awareness. Like, let's say to the fact that, you can have a nationality outside of what most people are raised to believe, or most people are educated to believe, right? So for myself, it's a very interesting journey. If you talk about anything, you would somewhat want to kind of include or talk to people about where you come from, just so they can see the scope of why it's even important to you, or why it was something that, you needed to feel like you even are passionate about talking about. So for me, I am. But being passionate about my culture isn't something, especially now, that I actually even share with many quote-unquote Moors. Unfortunately, the last couple years, I've noticed it's really it's been really polluted. Not only what it is to be a Moor, but what it can be for most. I think that when some people, and when some energy sometimes taints the waters, it can do that for a lot. So there's a lot of misconception that it's a religion, or it's something that is so religious based, or something that most black folk can't be a part of or down with, which I understand. But for me, my journey, and even knowing who I am, and I'm talking outside of how this country kind of raised me up to believe, meaning that I'm a black woman. But yes, I do come from, my family comes from, like all of our families. So for me, knowing that most people do see your, know your name, or if most people don't, my name is Cordoba, or Celina Cordoba. So a lot of people that don't meet me physically will either A, think I'm Sephardic or Jewish, because my last name is Sephardic, but will also think that I look Castilian or Latina in the typical Latina sense. But there's a huge I would say, there's a huge wave of people understanding what it is to be Afro-Latina and what that is for them. For me, my family and my culture and my mom and how I was raised, I was always raised to know, not only, of course, am I a black woman, but that we come from someplace, why my last name is Cordoba, why people would have, misconceptions or misunderstandings about, what I look like and all these things. But, truthfully and honestly, my father's last name is Cordoba. We do come from Spain. My family are those black Spaniards that were kicked out in the change of the century. One of my great ancestors, he's known as Hakam the First. He was one of the first original people to actually go to Spain and bring culture, bring bathhouses. My great, which is I'm actually really proud about, because I always wondered why I was so addicted to bathhouses and, cold and hot water and all these things. And, to find out, well, culturally, this is what your family did. So for me, I was always proud at the age of, like, I'd say 3, 4, 5, to know that not only my mom and my family spoke Spanish, but that, we could look black, be black, but also have a little bit more under our belt, meaning that literally a little bit more. So, certain things happened to me in my life that I would say kind of ushered me into an understanding that the way in which I was brought up to believe in just, going to college would land me a good job, or, saving money, having a savings account, what a 401k is, a mutual fund. All these things that I really, my mom placed values in me, and I really understood and felt like, hey, I need to know what this is about in order to, take care of my estate and my business when I get older. And then, of course, for me, I'm going to share these things in like bulletproofs because it'll make sense as to why I'm telling people, and I'm even explaining as to why, your nationality and declaring and who you are is such a private and unique journey that if anyone is promising you to do all of your quote-unquote paperwork, or that they can, clear your debt or establish your own a trust for your family, not only are they lying to you, but it's not true and it's not real. There's a lot of new people, a lot of new energy popping up in the world, especially the last like 4 or 5 years, not only about Moorish history and Moorish science. My phone dropped and I have it there on vibrate because my son's inside. Anyway, there's a lot of energy about being a Moor, but it is so become polluted because it has nothing to do with downloading paperwork. It has nothing to do with investing in a external temple. It has nothing to do with that at all. And unfortunately, that's kind of what's been advertised and what's been perpetuated. And it's really making it confusing for a lot of people that do want to understand how their history and how their ancestors and how their past can influence them now and what might be there, right? So rather than me making this a whole diatribe about history and all of that, what I wanted to share with you today is that it's something that anybody can do. You can declare your nationality, whether you look dark-skinned, brown, Puerto Rican, Dominican, Cuban. All of these terms of art were actually created to disseminate just from the whole. Being a Moor for me is literally like that of a verb. It is growing every day. It's respecting everyone's religion and culture. It's being able to see myself and where I fit in all that exists around the world. And it sounds kitschy, but when you do come from North, Central, and South America, it's not like you have to solidify or just co-sign to one. So even though my family from Spain migrated to Barbados and Panama, my mom was born in Panama, my dad was born in Panama, my great-grandparents were from Spain and from Spain and from Barbados. My grandmother's side, the Brathwaites and the Fredericks, and then my grandfather's side, the Fredericks, and my grandmother's side, the Brathwaites. And then my father, being a Cordoba, all of that, what that led the Brathwaites and the Fredericks to emerge and all that good stuff. So everybody has a family story, but for me, mine kind of became askewed in the sense that, unfortunately, trauma, we talk about things that happen to us that's traumatic and how horrible sometimes, because these traumatic events place a great hold in our lives. But as I'm getting older, and the work that not only I'm hoping to be able to share with people is that you don't have to necessarily stay in these traumatized places or things that happen to you or have happened to your family and then, of course, not only emotionally affect you, but you want to make sure that you're still able to attract love and happiness and all these things that we talk about, but that's almost impossible if you're angry or if you feel slighted or if you feel betrayed. So I dealt with a lot of those emotions, which is why I feel like I can even share and talk about it. So many people want to just exist when things are perfect and pretty, but unfortunately for me, it wasn't always like that. I did grow up in Bushwick. I grew up in a great family home, but most of all the men in my family are electrical engineers and I haven't seen them in over 10 years. Like my uncles, it's actually been 18 years now. But all my uncles, Emilio, Armando, all of them electrical engineers. My aunts and stuff, nurses, writers. My mom was a journalist. Fast forwarding the story, my mom passed away when I was a sophomore in college. She died from an over-anesthetized hip. Before they even, performed the surgery, she was pronounced brain dead, and not only was it a tragedy to our family, of course, but it really woke me up to so much, because now, the hospital for special surgery, admitted to malpractice, understanding what someone's debt is at 19, inheriting debt, figuring out what to do with all of this energy. And to be honest, it taught me so much. It taught me that a corporation could monetize and value someone's life based on their age, their occupation, what they did. Literally say, okay, this woman's 45, 42, she has 2 kids, but one is almost an adult, one's 19, they're legally adults, so they don't need the mills. you know what we're going to do? We're going to cut them off with $500,000, say good riddance, and call it a day. We'll take responsibility so it doesn't get too dirty. And that's exactly what happened. But after that, in inheriting that little bit of money, which sounds like a lot, but for me, 250 was a little bit more actually. It was a little bit, it doesn't matter. I'm saying this to say, I had a secured mutual fund. That secured mutual fund after 9/11, and I'm talking about this because these are the exact things that said to me, what the fuck is going on? Why is it that I had a secured mutual fund that I thought that I would be able to use as this nest egg? Not only did I lose my mom, but, you know, can I get something at the end that I might be able to say, okay, at least, you know, we can at least invest in a little house. I was kicked out of my house the day of her funeral. You know, there was a difference in beliefs. She wanted to be cremated. They wanted to bury her in a casket. All these things that really shouldn't divide, but it did divide and conquer. And when you're younger, you can't force an elder to see beyond what they're choosing to see at the time. So, you know, for me, it was saying, okay, I'm going to go back to school. I'm going to finish college. But at this time, I'm thinking that this $250,000 is going to be at Morgan Stanley under this secured mutual fund. 9/11 takes place, it's ghost. I say this to say, I learned so much about how money worked, how the Dow works, how, you know, a secured mutual fund, what that actually means in real time, why people with more than $1 million money didn't get touched, but people like mine did. Also, what even led me to want to be a healer and take care. My mom passed away from this huge malpractice defeat, and do you know what that came from? That came from my father being a gunny sergeant. He was a gunny sergeant for 22 years. I was born on a naval base that was irradiated. So I was born in North Carolina. I didn't find out that this naval base had issues and was irradiated. Sounds like some X-Men shit. But literally, I get a phone call after my mom passes, after I'm living on my own in Brooklyn, and it's like, I remember I lived on McDougal Street, and I get a phone call, and this woman asks me, she's like, hey, you know, I can see that, you know, you were born on this naval base. Have you or anybody in your family suffered from this, that, and the third? You know, have you know, a whole bunch of people between 73 and 78 have passed, all of this. So not only am I like, okay, wait, don't be alarmed, because this can actually feed you to believe that you have something, right? But also do the knowledge. A light bulb went off. My knees, my mother's hips, why her hips started hurting her even more after I was born. We never knew. We thought it was just timing, bad timing. You know, it's like she injured it when she was younger, but why is it hurting her even more? Why are there even more issues? So going to get this small thing taken care of, you know, turn into something huge. Oh my goodness. I'm gonna call you right back. I'm taping. But I'm on the camera and I'm answering your call. I'm gonna call you right back. Okay, love, peace. So, and that's life. But so what the funny thing is about that is that, you know, I didn't know why I had joint issues. I didn't know, you know, you take ballet, you know, I injured my knee in a volleyball tournament. I broke my fibula, dislocated my kneecap, went to the doctor, and the doctor's like, were you flung from a horse? Like, what happened to you? I'm like, I was playing volleyball, my kneecap slipped out. I had surgery the same day that injury took place, or like a week later, right? Then being cutesy in my house, injured my other knee the next, not even 6 months later, had surgery on both my knees within a year. Now I'm like, wow, my mother feels guilty. All of this karmic energy, you know, of inheriting joint issues and thinking that I'm gonna pass it because, you know, I'm active. And no, this happened to me, but what that led me to learn was, okay, how do I keep myself healthy and fit without necessarily investing in Western medicine, right? And then that led me to going, okay, let me figure out how to do something outside of theater and outside of whatever. Because everything in my life was kind of like really a blessing until my mom passed. And then I say a blessing because of course you go through things, but it's not like, you know, you don't have somebody to cushion you, or you don't have a home to go to. This was my now new reality. And that just grew me up a lot. So at like 21, you know, I've talked about this, but for me, you can see why after 9/11 and after I met a seer when I was 21 going on 22. So meeting him, it was like, you know, we talked about it being like a lock and a key. There was so much that I inherited through my, you know, not only my bloodline, but that I knew about my culture, but that I didn't necessarily talk to a lot of people about. You know, most of the people in Bushwick that I did grow up with, you know, they kind of knew, you know, who they were and who my family was, but it wasn't like we needed to reiterate it. You know, you either are Cubano or Latino or Dominicano or whatever, and if you're black and you speak Spanish, you know, you're recognized by the black folk, but not the same way the Africans or, you know, the West Indians recognize shit. So I laughed at that because most people, you know, would consider me to look Jamaican or be Jamaican, but this is again why we can be all of these things. You can put a dot on my head and I'll look like my mom could be part Indian, because we can all do these things when we're cultured and when we're melanated. But it goes back to saying my nationality and declaring it was not a big stretch for me. My family was always that. I always knew who I was. My name, Celina Miguel, all of my names had L in them. My sister, Micaela, like my mom was very specific about wanting and letting us know who the Elohims were, who the L's were. I was raised somewhat Christian, but a little bit Buddhist. You know, you're going to go to temple, we're going to go to this Buddhist shrine, we're going to, you know, so I was exposed to a lot of different culture. So for me, it's not to say that I didn't understand Christianity and, you know, going to your cotillion, because I did that ritual as well. But I grew up in a family where a lot of the men, once they moved here, did become Freemasons. All of them did. They had money, they started doing really well from themselves, but it created a rift and a trust in the relationship between the women. So, you know, it's something my grandmother talked about. It's something that we all discovered and knew. You know, my grandfather had a Con Ed. Everybody at the Henna Con Ed knew my family because my grandfather was the main electrical engineer. So are all of my uncles, you know, that I haven't seen for 20 years. And I say that to say, you can't control what people want to do. You can't convince your family to be something that they don't want to be. But my mom never took that out. She was a very amazing cultured woman who really taught me beyond my years, you know. So now I catch up with it and I understand certain stuff, but it was almost like taking myself back to which I knew I should have always done. And, you know, I put myself in the process or on the path of discovering what it was for myself. In 2001, you know, I was teaching yoga and like working out at schools or whatever. Long story short, ran into this woman named Myra Shira L. Myra's a big woman, 350 pounds, in a school, guidance counselor, and she was Cubano. So I'm teaching all these people in a gymnasium, and who do I meet up with? This woman named Myra, who happens to know a brother named, I'm gonna fast forward the story. So Myra, she talks to me, she's like, you know, you're a beautiful spirit, right. Turns out she's an astrology teacher. I never met any black woman that taught astrology. I'm really into all this new age kitschy stuff at 21 because, you know, health and healing and, you know, acupuncture and, you know, steaming and all the things I can do. Longer story short, that leads me to say, once I went to Myra's astrology class, I was like, great information. I gotta tell Asir about this. And that's kind of how we all said, you know what? The history that he understands, Seer has an amazing way of explaining history in a way that not many people know how to do. And he makes it palpable for the 21st century mind and for, you know, brothers that grew up in the hood, which is such an amazing gift. And I remember 16 years ago, we would talk and it would be like from 11, all this, you know, nighttime talk from 11 to 4 in the morning. And I was like, if I can do whatever I can in my power to allow this, what we share, to allow it to be heard by other people. Facebook wasn't around then, Instagram didn't exist, but it's to say that the seed was planted. And from then it just attracted a lot of people, a lot of brothers, but you don't know who and what and why people think. You're just an open vessel, like, yay, you have friends and you're not the only nerd that likes talking about history and bullshit. So I was so excited to meet new people, but then I started realizing that all these people had agendas and all these men were like almost jealous, you know, that I was like hanging out with the brother, when really it's like, why would a man be jealous of another woman's company with another? Anyway, to veer off, everything that I discovered through UCC, and that, by the way, is a process that has nothing to do with declaring one's nationality. UCC are Uniform Commercial Codes, and I needed to understand it back in the day in 2001, but after declaring and doing that and typing all of my own documents and sitting there from, I would say from 7 o'clock to 3 o'clock every Thursday and Friday, going to Myra's house, I knew and learned so much because I put myself in the process of understanding what a collateral statement was, understanding what, section, so many things that I did myself. Because I put myself on the course because losing this money didn't make sense. Investing in the dream didn't all make sense to me anymore. Something else has got to be behind this closed door. Something else has got to give. So Asir and I, that's basically what I can't walk away from and say we were not so good at doing. He had the knowledge, and then I had somewhat of the organization. And then years later, you try to share those gifts and say, okay, if you learn how to type and do X, Y, and Z, this brother types and organizes paperwork better than anybody, but we've had over 13, 14, 15 years to practice and get it right. So for me, when I hear about people declaring their nationality and doing it through downloaded paperwork and meeting the wrong people, we always meet people that are like, oh, I spent $4,000 and blah, 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 blah. And can you? No, I can't help you for free, because at the end of the day, it's my time that I've got to spend and sharing. And that's really what it is. There is no way that I can actually, or any one man could actually declare or do your own paperwork for you. And when we say paperwork, it's not UCC work that we did 15 years ago. Whoever is dealing with UCC paperwork and trying to convince you that this is the way, that has to deal with commercial property. And honestly, if you don't do it for yourself and you don't make yourself your own, then you're signing all your property over to someone else. And anyone knows this about business. So you're actually, all of these commercial codes and all of these things that people have not studied and defined and understood for themselves, it's really unfortunate because you're getting duped. You're going to get your money, like, who is spending money? And this is what it is as well. This is why a lot of brothers and people aren't declaring and consolidating their identity. If you know anything about law, it's a law of language. It's language. It's like learning Spanish or French or anything else. Once you learn this language, then you understand how it works. If your identity, meaning your driver's license, your passport, all of the things that other institutions deal with you in are not reflective of this nationality that you so claim to use on every other document, right? But your name and but your checks and but at the bank, then it's not real. I'm sorry, you're still Felicia Jones, whether you call yourself Felicia Jones Bay or Simone Raquel Ankh L. If your driver's license and your passport and your documents that other people, other interfaces meet you as do not reflect your nationality, then it's a bub. It's a rub-bub. It's not real. And that's really hard for people to do, because now think about it. Brothers can't be doing this if they have warrants, if they have a whole bunch of cases, if they're trying to get out of something. I've met so many people that are like, yo, I'm trying to get out. Then don't do this. To be an upstairs businesswoman, forget your culture and your nationality. Because you can be a businesswoman, you can be, and understand that you can't do things that are kind of back-ass words and then expect to move forward. And I say that to say, so many people are using paperwork as a means to try to acquire homes when they do not have anything outside in their private sector on the track to say, hey, are you a part of something greater? Have you established a trust? Do you know what that is for yourself? If you can't go to the post office to mail a Tico gas bill, then I don't expect you to be, and that's why this isn't for everybody. So I meet people, and it's not something that I can even talk about because it's been so polluted. And that's why I'm grateful for the work that I did with the seer, and the work that we continue to remind ourselves is important, because it's greater than us. We established and resurrected something that we both said, hey, ain't no nigga done this shit right. None of these motherfuckers in these I'm done with these people. Literally, I'm done with them. Because you see why? And it's like, not only do I see why, but if we don't take a couple years out to figure out how to do it correctly, I can't go to any one of these temples or any one of these brothers or any one of these Moors and expect them to do anything, because they're all on the take. They all are just saying that they're the Moors. They're more, I'm a Moor. But nothing is reflective of that. So rather than make them realize and try to humdrum it in, it's my job to take care of myself and my family and my, intellect, and preserve what's of value to me. And I'm willing to share it, the process, but it's so simple. That's why I laugh. It's like, we can't share something publicly when the people that are in public places to keep the truth going are actually selling lies just to get people to invest in them or to believe in them. And it's really sad, because it's simple. People go, I don't want to correct my name. You don't have to, but you're not going to have anything in real time that other people are going to understand and say, hey, I understand why you did this, that, and the third, because when you understand ecclesiastical law, you understand what the L's are, you understand why, then it's not like you have to defend or explain. Your culture is your own. Whatever you do religious-wise is on you, in your own private time. But when it comes to this right here, that's really why I'm grateful for certain works that Noble Drew did back in the day, because he was the only one that actually created a line, a gateway for us not to be all caught up in the 14th Amendment, losing our titles of nobility. It was a way for us to keep them. So that's why I rock with it. And it's unfortunate that so many people get caught up in the character of a man or in the nature of a person. I didn't know him. I don't know a lot of these leaders that call themselves leaders. What you do though, is if you're interested in work and you're interested in what's real, you study and you take what's best. And you say, okay, it's for me to build my own building blocks. So I know what I'm doing because I built it and I took the time, and I've sat and I've driven with my own plates, and I went through years where I was exercising and understanding. But you've got to know what you're doing and know why things aren't working on a huge scale, because there's so many people that have 1 foot in and 1 foot out. And that's cool, but it's not what I'm doing. So you can do what you're doing, but it's not what I'm doing, and I wouldn't recommend it for people. Personally, I know that we've helped so many people, because the people that we're willing to help are willing to pick up the phone and ask questions and say, yo, I went downtown and what you said worked, and Ray. You've got to do it for yourself. And it's not this huge downloaded paperwork process. It's a couple of simple steps that so many are making UCC affiliated and sovereign citizenship that has nothing to do with declaring one's own nationality, establishing a trust for your family, and saying, hey, let me, have my ID consolidated, because, it's like people that come from Egypt or Ethiopia. You don't give up, the best parts of your ID or whatever, or, you don't want to do that. You can still have a passport from where you're born and still thing. And I'm just going to show this real quick, because it's like this, right? So I'm just going to clear my thing. But it's like that. You want to be able to rock your headdress, because you understand in law, if anyone has on a headdress, it means that you are a free thinker. You're not under any... So, that's not proof. It's not like this gets me out of... No, this is just an extension of who you are. So if you don't know how to explain it, if you don't know how to talk, if you don't know how to, if you don't know why you're doing this, or why it's passionate to you, or if it's just because some guy that you're into is a Moor, I feel it's unfortunate, because it's something that so many mothers and families can benefit from, but you've got to know what you're in it for and why you're doing all these things. It's not something that's like a get out of jail and a don't pay your this. If you're doing this, then you actually have to really be upstairs about your quote unquote documents and why you're filing certain things, and knowing what forms are applicable to you now. A Moor is 8 and has all his stuff. He has, because it was something that was important to me. I understood after losing so much, after losing my home, after losing my mom, after inheriting debt, after losing 250, like there was a time that I was like, yo, this shit is so but life is unfair. Now what, right? So for me, declaring my nationality and knowing that I've always been wasn't something that was so difficult to stretch. And it's not something that you should be afraid to talk about. But when all of these other people have made your culture something that it is not, you just live and do your life and know what you're doing privately, because that is not what I want to even be associated with, unfortunately. You understand? Like, it's not about co-opting and having a whole bunch of wives and investing in other people that don't even have a regular, ask to see their driver's license, ask to see, you know, their title of nobility, ask to see something. Because if you are that, then something outside of that other people see you as should reflect that, right? That's what I think. But I'm not here to sell anything. It's not something to be sold. It's not something to be downloaded. It's not something that I even want other people to be a part of, to be quite honest, because I don't think that people are mentally ready to deal with the responsibility that comes with, you know? So I love my culture. I'm very grateful of what it is I've discovered and what it is I'm going to continue to do, and what I hope to be able to share with other people that understand that you don't have to vaccinate your children. You don't, you know, the Hasids and there's so many different people here that exist and are able to work and have jobs. And so why is it when when someone of my hue is doing such, it's such an alarm? It's because people walk with all this chaotic energy. You know, of course I've had people that have stopped me, and just a couple months ago, I went to the Social Security office and the lady laughed at me and was like, ha ha ha, you want to do? And I was like, yeah, but we're not here to have a dialogue about why and me convincing you. You're here to process this paper. And the paper is written out correctly, and my documents, the ID that she needed to see to validate that being true, were all there. So there was no discussion. It was done, and that was that. But you have to allow people to talk trash, to treat you like a certain way, and you just stay firm and go, all right, I'll see you at the bank, okay. And that's what I've been doing, because all these other people that are out there and talking about them being, I don't even want to, sometimes I'm like, my God, another one. So guys, watch out for people that are telling you to invest in them or saying, I could do that for you, I got that, just give me this and I'm gonna just and watch the way you're. No, you have to do it yourself. That is what it is about. And if you don't have the patience and the stamina and just a little bit of chutzpah, get out now, because it's not something for you to do. And I explain all that about my family and my journey, not to sound or thing, but to say that, you know, it wasn't difficult for me personally to go, you know what, I've got to figure something else out, because I've seen something that no one should have seen at my age. You understand? And at the end of the day, walk with it. You don't always have to talk with it. Allow people to convince you of temples and all these outside artifices, when really the more science temple is that lies within. It's like that with yoga. Yoga does not exist on the mat. It exists outside of the studio and off of the mat. So I say that to say, you know, if anyone wants to email me or thing, please do so. I'm here, Asir. I could tell you think, and why, but it's really good to have the details and the filler. And that's what Asir provided for me. And I'm very grateful, because, you know, we'll sit there and read like books all night, and I'll have 3 in front of me, and I'm taking notes. And the things that I took notes on, he could recite quickly. And that was like God sending me I felt like an angel in disguise that was like, yo, I'm here discerning all this, because now I have to erase all of my old stuff, learn the new. He just came with such a clarity and has a gift of a little bit of a, you know, a photogenic memory that's amazing, that he'll just be like, oh yeah, I know what book it was in, I know what. So it was like, you know, having cliff notes to all of like your college term papers. And I used that towards our advantage and tried to organize as much as I could for us, and then say, all right, now we've got to do X, Y, and Z, because we understand it. So if we understand it, then there shouldn't be any fear. But this is not what, you know, the Bratton Bays and all of these systems of thought and people that I've met along the years that I've known. I know all these characters out there because I did my own work. And there's not a lot of, unfortunately, not a lot of women that I've met along the way that I can even have a conversation about anything considered, you know, in this realm. But it doesn't mean that they're whack or that they don't know stuff. I've tried, but, you know, it can sound like, oh, I don't really want to deal with that because it's going to be hard. And, you know, IRS forms are like allergens for people. But for me, when I inherited and dealt with what I dealt with, I was like, look, I need to be friends and understand how all these, you know, forms work. What are these forms? Why don't we learn this in college? So, you know, took a little bit of time, and whatever I've learned, if it can help anybody, I'm going to do so. But, you know, I'm also not here to convince people to not give their money and invest in a dream. That's what America has become. So if you want to do that, just know that there's a lot of characters and people out there that act this role, but they're not living that. And it is not about collecting bitches, and it's not about, you know, getting out of child support, but it is about understanding your role and what the state represents in that whole contract. It's really just understanding contractual law. So if you're interested in all of that, rock with it. Become a Moor. Do it for real, because it really does iron a lot of kinks if you understand what you're even trying to iron. I'll see you guys later. Thank you for listening today to all of that. I just wanted to wrap it up and, you know, kind of explain why I'm even who I say I am, you know? All right, love and peace. Ooh, I think something jumped in the water.